What's going on, gentlemen? Happy Monday, and of course, welcome to the channel. So, Mondays, we always talk about motivation and stuff, but today I want to talk about something a little bit different. It's definitely in the motivational, atmosphere, but I wanted to talk about men's mental health, and I wanted to talk about this not so much from the perspective that I talked about this in the past. Now, if you've been around long enough, you've noticed that I've made videos about men's mental health, particularly in June, covering this very topic. But one thing I noticed is that, to be quite frank, not even men care about men's mental health.
On night school, they said you just guzzling the Red Bulls.
I'd be so tired. I'd be so tired right before I do night school that I do like a Red Bull and then I struggle to get to sleep. I've been dealing with depression too, so I've been trying to manage that. And so then I do a lot of over exercise and things like that to calm myself, and then that makes me super tired.
Does your wife do Red Bull too?
No, she won't touch the stuff.
Is she not on top of you about the Red Bull? You seem too wise.
Wait, I hide under the desk.
Too wise to do Red Bull the way that you do.
You say you deal with depression?
Yeah, like we just skipped over. It's Joe Budden Podcast. The Red Bull's way more interesting.
I didn't hear him say depression.
He said I deal with depression.
And unfortunately, this is the perspective I have now, because it's funny that not even considering the videos that I've made, but just talking about some of the things that I've seen on social media platforms, how when men do vocalize and talk about how they feel, there's always going to be some, edgelord in the comment section that, starts talking bad, starts bad-mouthing this man about his feelings or whatever the case may be. Now, before I get into the ins and outs of this video, or, just general ramblings about it, because this video is absolutely unprepared. I guess I should, start with that. Just a forewarning, this video is absolutely unprepared. There are no notes for it. It's just a reflection that I've had as a content creator, a guy trying to, make a name for himself in this space, and just overall just living life, right? Like, I don't need to be a creator to know that shit is fucked up. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't need to be a creator to know that even within our own spaces as men, we still have to overcome challenges, which this might sound, you might come at me for this, but unfortunately, a lot of the things that we face as men, as far as challenges are concerned, when it comes to having these areas open where we could talk about these feelings, are purported by other guys. You know what I mean? Like, not to use anyone as a specific example, but you'll have these archetypical alpha male creators who badmouth depression, who badmouth anxiety, who badmouth these things. And, I'm never a person to say these things or identify these things in order for them to be used as a crutch, right? If anything, we try to identify these issues so we can overcome them, because how else do you get over a problem, or how else do you fix something if you can't identify what the problem is? So with all that being said, that's why we highlight these things. It's never for someone to say like, oh, I have depression, so therefore I'm not going to try and reach my endeavors, or I have anxiety, so I'm not going to go ask my boss for a raise even though I know I deserve it. And those are small, yet someone could say rather stupid, for lack of a better word, stupid examples, but those have real bearing and real consequences on our everyday lives, because when we can't function or perform on the small things, how could you possibly expect yourself to perform when time comes, when you're facing something that could be monumental in your perspective, right? So I just think it's all interesting to see. And harking back on what I was saying before about the archetypical alpha males, it's interesting because, it's almost as though these men assume that they are averse to any sort of challenge, although that's what they make it seem like, right? They make it seem as though that they're impervious to life's challenges and the things that happen to you, but we all know that's not the case, right? So the ultimate question is, why is it that some men don't even care about other men's mental health? I think it's twofold. I think part of it is the ideology of I had to suffer, and through my suffering I grew, so other people have to suffer. And as a side note, some parents do that with their children, which I think is absolutely crass and terrible. I know it's a random moot point, but I was just thinking about that. Because, for real, like, I always thought the idea of becoming a parent is so you can pave the way for your children going forward, right? And give them a better life, give them a better opportunity. But some of y'all out here are totally okay with seeing your children struggle. And I don't have children, right? So I don't really have that hard of an opinion on this, but my personal perspective, it would make sense to want to make their lives easier because of the things that you went through, and not necessarily make them go through what you went through simply because that helped you evolve as a human being. That doesn't make any fucking sense in my opinion. But going back to what I was saying, you know, you would assume that a lot of these guys have never faced any sort of challenge. Like, they just popped out the womb, you know, as a apex alpha already. And first of all, not only is labeling yourself as an alpha male insanely cringe, it also takes away from the human experience, right? Because what I've noticed, and I said this in the video that I posted recently, what I notice is a lot of us try to just put these very complex and nuanced situations and put them into two categories, right? Male or female. That's not how life works, brother. It's all about human psychology. It is all about human nature and how we do things as individuals. Like I said in the last video, are some genders or both genders or whatever the fuck you want to think of, do we have proclivities to do things differently or more intense than someone else? Yes, of course. But at the end of the day, we all have these same emotional drives, these hormones. Don't even try and debate me on that one, because yes, both men and women have testosterone and estrogen, just at different levels. But for the most part, basically what I'm trying to say is, guys, this is human nature shit, right? Like, yeah, some of it is female intuition, some of it is female nature, some of it is male intuition, some of it is male nature. But at the end of the day, this is human nature, right? And I think the reason why guys suffer so much with their mental health is because we put emotions and mental health in a box that it doesn't belong to. Like, we assume because of the words masculine, manhood, masculinity, we think because of those words, we now have to be absolutely devoid of any sort of emotions that we're able to possess aside from anger, which in the grand spectrum, anger being the only thing you are willing to let out as far as emotions are concerned isn't even conducive. Because what is the aftermath of being the angry guy that lashes out? You know, we've all heard of the tropes of the angry black guy, which is such a dumb trope, right? Like, if you say something to piss me off, you don't think I'm gonna get mad? Like, obviously I'm gonna be upset, right? But going back to what I was saying, we all know these tropes, right? Of like a Kyle punching the walls, punching holes in the walls and shit. Or, you know, a little more macabre and way more serious, a bunch of school pew-pewers. If you know what I mean. Listen, I'm not trying to get my shit canceled from YouTube, right? So what is the point of using anger or being allowed to have anger be the only emotion we can express? What good does that do us, gentlemen? It doesn't do us any good. And unfortunately, for a lot of people, and I would say men and women are both guilty of this, for the most part, men are guilty of purporting... Is that a squirrel? There's a squirrel above me. So I would say men are guilty of purporting these ideologies, right? Like, men don't cry, men don't complain. I mean, I'm kind of in the camp of men not complaining. I'm in the camp of people just not complaining, period, right? Like, you can make observations and you can have opinions about stuff, but complaining without doing anything to solve it, in my personal opinion, is useless, right? But again, as men, what do? Don't cry, man up, stop crying. Why are you complaining? Toughen up. You're acting like a woman. You know, all these things to stop us from just living a human experience. Now, in no way, shape, or form am I telling you to go ahead and start sobbing in public, right? I'm not telling you to cry your eyes out in the middle of the bar, you know, because you're 6 drinks in. Which, side note, this actually happened to me. Not even on some, like, I was sad shit, but this is when I was working in tech. I was so excited to, like, finally, you know, things started moving the way I wanted them to, and it was during a work trip, and I was in Mexico, and I had a couple drinks in me. I think I was like 4 or 5 mojitos in, and I forgot who I was talking to, but we just had this weird, like, spiritual heart to heart, and I just started crying. I was like, yo, this place is beautiful. I can't believe I'm here. It was a beautiful moment. If you've ever been to Mexico, go back. If you've never been to Mexico, obviously be safe and be smart. But, you know, go there. You'll have a great time. But more or less, listen, I'm not saying, you know, cry your eyes out in front of a bunch of strangers. I'm not saying any of that. What I'm really saying is, dog, like, it's okay to have a human experience. Like, we've all cried. You know, as much as you want to be macho and say, you know, you've never cried or never shed a tear, which is absolutely insane. You know, I lost 2 brothers, and motherfucker, I be crying like a motherfucker whenever I think about them. If I think about them long enough, of course I'm gonna shed a tear. Those are my brothers. Like, why would you not want to feel your emotions and express them in a way that helps you? Why not? You know, not to hark too much on the emotions and stuff, more so on the cause as to why we glaze over these things. But if there's anything I really want to talk about, and again, this is unscripted, I've got no notes, so, you know, this is just flowing consciousness. If you've been rocking with me for this long, I appreciate it, thank you so much. Also, while I got you here, if you haven't hit the like or subscribe button, do me a favor and hit both those buttons right now. We are on the way to 10,000 subscribers, and I want you to be a part of this community, because I think you deserve to be in a community where we can talk like men, or more so talk like men, talk like beings that have ideas that have not been inspired by others, if that makes sense. But point of which I'm trying to say, I think the most damning thing about all of this is that when a man does say he has depression or anxiety or something of that nature, it's never validated. And the biggest example I have of this is Mark Lamont Hill, as of recent. Of course, there's tons of examples of this, but as of recent, Mark Lamont Hill. Now, you may know him, you may not know him. I believe he's an independent political commentator who does have some Democratic talking points from time to time. I'm gonna just say this right now, this is not about the politics of America. I'm not, personally speaking, if you think either one of these parties has your best interest in mind, I think you are mistaken. That's my personal opinion. But more so than that, I'm not talking about politics. I'm just talking about a political commentator who talked about something human, i.e. depression. So he's on the Joe Budden Podcast, and he's talking about all the things that he's been going through. And, you know, he mentioned that he's going through depression. He didn't hark on it. Like, he didn't stop and, you know, describe it word for word. But it was just so interesting to see how Joe Budden just completely glossed over him saying that he has depression. Now, is it Joe Budden's responsibility to say, time out, we got to talk about this? Brother, what are you going through? Not necessarily, no. But I think at some degree, to some level, we want to be able to foster for lack of better terms, we want to create a safe space for us to be able to talk about this shit, right? It's so funny using those words, knowing how bastardized they've been throughout, like, you know, just media. But, you know, it's so interesting to see how they just completely gloss over him stating that he has depression. Now, granted, these men themselves might also have depression, and that's also plenty valid. But I also think that would be a welcoming scenario for all of them to bring that to the table. Does that mean bond over trauma? Not necessarily, because most of those relationships don't end well anyway. But for the most part, we all of us, every single human to some degree, it may not be as extreme as someone else's, but to some extent, we all can bring that depression or that sadness or that traumatic event to the table and help other people. I don't fuck with flies, guys. So as a side note, I know y'all seen that. And help other people gain clarity with some of the things that they went through as well. Now, this requires a lot from an individual, right? It requires a heavy deal of self-awareness. And also, it requires a heavy deal of self-assurance. So much so that one might say, at this point in that person's journey, the depression may not even be a priority for them, right? But if anything, this plays into what I was saying before. I made an Instagram clip about this very topic. And I think the beauty of going through these things and making it out on the other side is that you're now able to be a beacon of light for others, right? I'm not saying you have to shepherd them along their way. I'm not saying you have to now become a psychologist and go out of your way to, you know, do sessions with people and things of that nature. As a side note, if you do want to do some sort of, you know, consultation, just talk about life. I do have a link. I don't think I have it in the description. It might be in the description, whatever the case may be. But if you do want to have a 45-minute consultation, feel free to click the link. I'm not selling you anything dating or relationships wise. This is more so from a life perspective. But more so than that, the conversation is 45 minutes and it's free, right? So if you just want to bounce ideas off of someone, then go ahead and book a session. while I'm on the topic, I should say, as of right now, I have zero intentions on taking on any clients. I think at max, if your situation were to align with the way I do things, at max I'd probably take on like 2 or 3. But I have zero intentions on taking on any clients. I'm trying to get my acting and my modeling shit on the road, guys. I did an indie movie a couple of months ago, back in 2024. I'm still waiting on this final cut. I just wrapped up being a fucking lion for someone's music video. So I'm waiting on that too. But anyway, not to talk about myself. The point of what I'm trying to say here, guys, is, you know, I almost jumped in front of a train a couple years ago, like back 2018, 2019. Oh man, the dogs in the block are barking. You might hear my neighbor's dog start barking shortly. But I almost jumped in front of a train back in 2018. And when I was at that moment in my life, I was at some really low points, to the point at which where obviously jumping in front of a train made a lot of fucking sense. Obviously now it doesn't, but at that time, shit, that would have been my one ticket out of here, right? But I didn't do it. And in not doing it, I've learned so much more about life. And I'm thankful that I didn't do it, but I'm also thankful that I was able to overcome that. But also at the same time, I kind of feel like it's mine and anyone else's responsibility for people who's gone through that to try and help other people as well. I'm not saying it's got to be forceful, right? Like I'm not going on a fucking depression crusades here, but if I've got something I could share or talk about, or if someone that I'm speaking to at that moment highlights that they've been suffering as well, what better moment for me to talk about what I've been through, to show them that there is someone that has not necessarily gone through exactly what they've been through, but I know the feeling of feeling hopeless. I know the feeling of like, yo, this shit is just not gonna work. I know the feeling of like, damn, how am I gonna put food on the table, etc., etc. You know, and why not share that with people? You know, when the bag that you carry, that burden, when those things can become gems and jewels, why not give them away? You know, why not help other people see that, you know, there is more to this life. There is another side of this. I know that I'm going through some shit right now, but I also know that I can make it on the other side. Now, of course, some people could say like faith, this is why we have religion, you know, etc., etc. As a side note, I'd say in response to that, this is not why we have religion, but yeah, you can make the case for it. But what I would say here is that personally, the best example I would want of someone who's, you know, gone through something, or let me redact that and say this. Case in point, in regards to what I just said, this is why we have religion and faith. Yes, that is true. But me personally speaking, and you let me know what you think in the comments, I would rather have an encounter with a human being, whether that be male or female, but have an encounter with a human being that has gone through something similar or potentially worse, or it doesn't even have to be worse, right? But just have gone through something and then still be able to, if not inspire me, impart some knowledge that could potentially help me change my situation. That's at least what I would want as an individual. And that is something that I want as an individual, which is why I'm not always out here just having conversations with people, because most people haven't lived the life that I've lived. And that's not a knock on them, you know, I wouldn't want anyone to go through some of the things that I've gone through personally, but I would want to find those that are ahead of me in life, but I've also gone through some of the things that I've gone through that would help me as well. I've been rambling for a long ass time, but here's what I want to say in closing. Gentlemen, the reality of it is, grand scale, big picture, no one cares about men's mental health. And in response to that, I would say 2 things. The first one being, to be quite frank, for the exception of people that want to be performative, honestly, no one really cares about anyone's mental health, whether that be someone from the LGBTQ community, someone of color, a Caucasoid, I just want to say that word, or whatever, you know, someone Oriental, whatever the case may be, right? We all go through shit. And unfortunately, no one's going to care but the people closest to you. And even then, they may not care, which leads me to my second thing. Regardless, even with those things considered, not only is it on you to work on your mental health, but in a weird, twisted sense, from an individualized basis, right? Because that's the only way this makes sense. if we all were to focus on bettering our mental health and then turning around and helping those closest to us, that would have a ripple effect that could affect the larger society, right? So that's just something worth thinking about. I got a couple other videos coming out Wednesday and Friday, but I want to say thank you so much for sticking around and listening to this. You know, it's just nothing more than just thoughts, just thoughts from the head. But let me know what you think. What do you guys think? As far as men's mental health is concerned, do you care or do you not care? And regardless of your answer, why or why not? Leave your thoughts in the comments below. I'm gonna get up at the sun. My fucking sandals are starting to bake up right now. I got all black sandals, so you know these shits is hotter than a motherfucker. And on top of that, I'm black too, so we getting cooked out here. Anyway, I'm gonna go back inside. I'm gonna see y'all on Wednesday. Peace out.